I'm going to show you how to use Layout Studio to design apps, iterate on their UI, and generate code with minimal iOS development experience. Today's example is designing the iOS TV app, but what you learn here can be applied to any app you want to make. I'm going to open the TV app now to show you what the UI that we're making looks like. I can see that the TV app has multiple sections of content, and each section scrolls horizontally. The first section I'm going to create is the one titled Now on Apple TV+. So without further delay, I'm going to open Layout Studio. Under the Gallery section, there's a layout called Movie Shelf. I'm going to preview this layout by tapping the button in the top right. And as you can see, the section it contains looks very similar to the section we want to build. So this will be the starting point for our app. I'm going to go back and back again, then I'm going to swipe on the movie shelf layout and duplicate it. The new layout will be called TV app because that's what we're building. I'm going to select done, and now we have the TV app layout under the layout section. When I select preview, you can see that this section it contains is the same as the section we saw in the gallery layout. Now the TV app has a bunch of sections with small rectangular cells. I'm going to duplicate this section to start filling our app with content. So I'm going to swipe on the section, tap duplicate, and I'm going to remove the supplementary from the first section. This is the badge because only a few sections in the TV app have badges. So when I preview it, you'll see the first section has no badges, and the second section has little badges on the items. Let's go back to the TV app to pick another section to build. You'll notice that the first two sections after this top section are wider than the section that we just created. So I'm going to go back to Layout Studio and create sections with slightly wider and taller cells. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to duplicate the first section, scroll to the bottom because that's where the duplicated section appears, and I'm going to select the group options and change the width dimension to be 256 and the height dimension to be 146. And then I'm going to duplicate this newly added section again so that we have two of these sections. And now I'm going to reorder them so that the two new added sections go before the existing sections with small cells. I'm going to select preview so we can see what the layout looks like. So there we have two sections with wider and taller cells above two sections with smaller cells. And the last section is the section we started with that has the badges. Let's go back to the TV app again. I'll scroll to the top and you'll notice that there's a section with full screen with cells. This section has a header, and the header is on top of the content. I want to add this section to our app. So I'm going to go back to Layout Studio, I'm going to go back to the Layout Editor, I'm going to go to the very bottom of the layout and select the cell that says Add Section. This creates a new section, and we're going to design it from scratch. Every group needs an item, so I'm going to add an item to the group in the new section, and I'm going to change the size of the group to be, I'm going to keep it as full width, but I'm going to have it occupy only 60% of the height. So now I'm going to preview it to see what we have so far. Okay, so the section we added, the size of the items looks right, but it doesn't scroll horizontally. How can I get that to happen? Well, I'm going to set in the options for the section the orthogonal scrolling behavior to group paging. This way, we can only scroll one group at a time. And then I'm going to preview it to show you what that looks like. So when I scroll it, you can see that it scrolls horizontally, and it only lets me scroll one group at a time. Compare that to the section 3, where if I let go, it keeps scrolling until it snaps to that leading edge boundary, just like the other sections. And they're all aligned to the same point. But this one is full width. I want this to be the first section, so I'm going to tap the reorder button and move section 4 to where section 0 was. And I'm going to select done. One thing we forgot to add in this section is the header. I'm going to select add header, and then I'm going to select preview. When I preview it, you can see that the header is not on top of the section content as we expected in the TV app. Also, you'll notice that the section 1 header and the section 0 header are slightly offset from each other. Let's go back and figure out what's happening. To address the offset problem, look at section 1 and look at the insets. The insets are set to have leading and trailing insets of 20 points. However, we want section 0 to remain full width. If we set, oops, I didn't mean to add that background decoration. If we set the content insets on section 0 to have leading and trailing insets, then the full width cells would also get pushed away from the edges. We don't want that. We just want the header to be pushed away from the edges. So I'm going to select the options in the header of section 0, and I'm going to change the insets to be 20 for leading and trailing to match the other sections. And now, when I preview it, you can see that the header is aligned with the other headers. However, the header was still above the section. The reason for that is because extends boundary was true. This means that the header makes the section bigger. If we don't want the header to make the section bigger, then we set extends boundary to false, and this way the header is on top of the content in the section. When I preview it, you can see that that is true. The header looks just like the TV app header. I'm going to go back to the TV app and pick another section to build. I really like this section with the channels because the cells are circular and it's much taller than the others. And there's an interesting background too. So I'm going to figure out how to build this section in Layout Studio. I'm going to start with one of the sections that doesn't have badges. I'm going to pick the smaller one, so section 3, and I'm going to duplicate it because this section will be the starting point for our section with circular cells. So I'm going to swipe on the section and select duplicate, and now the bottom section is the duplicate of section 3. The section in the TV app had circular cells, so I'm going to have to make the width the same as the height. This way, we'll at least have square cells at the bottom, and we do. We can see that they're squares. The question is, how do I make them circles? And the trick lies in setting the content radius of the items in that section correctly. So I'm going to select the options for section 5 and change the corner radius to half the width and height of the items, which is 108 divided by 2. And that gives us 54. So when I close this and preview it, section 5 has perfectly circular cells, just like we expected. However, this section is not yet tall, like we saw in the TV app, and the background is not very interesting. So I'm going to change the content insets of this section to be much bigger. So the top inset is going to be 300 instead of 24. Now I'm going to close, and preview, so you can see that section 5 is now much taller than the other sections. The header is a bit too high. I feel like it's disconnected from the cells in this section, so I'm going to change that, and I'm also going to make the background a bit more interesting. So the header offset should be updated just the same way the content inset for the top of the section was changed. So now this also went from 24 to 300. And the background decoration, I'm going to choose prettier colors so that this section is a little different from the others. I'll set a light and dark mode appearance so that this adapts to the light and dark mode on our device. So when I preview it, you'll see that it has a different color, the header is correctly offset and near the content, and when I change to light mode, the color gets lighter. When I change to dark mode, it goes to a darker background color. I'm going to go in the TV app again and pick another section to build. This time it's going to be this section with almost full width cells, and you can see that the items are aligned to the other section's items. So I think that the section with wider cells will be a good point to start from. And when I let go, it doesn't keep scrolling, so I know I'm going to have to change the orthogonal scrolling behavior too. So let's go back to Layout Studio, and let's go back to the layout editor, and I'm going to duplicate section 1, which has the wider cells and no badges. So I select duplicate, and now the section is at the bottom. And I said I had to change the orthogonal scrolling behavior, so I'm going to change it to group paging so that I can only scroll one group at a time. I'm going to change the size as well to be 388 so that it's much wider, and the height to be 0.5 of the fractional of the screen height so that the items are pretty tall. When I preview that, let's see what I get. So this is exactly what I expected. I should remove the header though, because in the TV app this section didn't have a header. So let's preview that again without the header. Now you can see what it looks like. This is exactly what we wanted. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create copies of section 3 twice so that this app has more content. So first one, I'm going to go to section 3. This is the section with small cells and without badges. So I'm going to duplicate it. I want this to be the last section, and I also want this to be section 5. So I'm going to reorder one of the duplicates to go where section 5 was. And then I'm going to select done, and I'm going to preview our layout. And now you can see that section 4 has badges, section 3 and section 5, section 8 are the same size cells and they don't have badges either. And our layout is pretty much finished. If you select the code button, this is where the magic of Layout Studio happens. When you select this, it generates the code files that will generate the layout you saw just now. So, for example, it has all the sections and groups and items. The view controller knows how to use that layout to display the cells, and then there's files to customize the cells, to customize the cell backgrounds, the section backgrounds, and to customize the badges. And in order to get this running on your device, you have to first get the files onto your computer. And the way you do that is you select the share button in the bottom right. So I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to airdrop the files to my laptop. And now that that's done, that will be the end of this video, and in the next video, I will show you how to actually get the code running on a device using the generated code files from Layout Studio.